Good morning. Welcome to Norwich City Council Licensing Subcommittee, Thursday 15th of September. We've got one main item on the agenda today, but I'll start with apologies. And there are none. Declarations of interest. And again, there are none. So we move on to item number 3, which is an application for granting a premises licence for Erpingham House, 22 Tombland in Norwich. And Maxine, please, could you introduce the report, and then we'll ask some questions and hear from members of the public. Thank you.
Members are asked, in accordance with the delegation of licensing functions contained in the Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy, Licensing Act 2003, to consider the application for the grant of a premises licence in respect of Erpingham House, 22 Tombland, Norwich, NR3 1RF, following the receipt of relevant representation. It is recommended that members determine the application to grant the premises licence in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and subsequent regulations, guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy. The applicant is Plantrepreneur Limited. The proposed DPS is Louis Blake. The application seeks to allow the licensable activities, times and opening hours as set out in the application form, which is attached to Appendix A. This also includes the steps proposed to promote the licensing objectives, which is the operating schedule. From the responsible authorities, representation we did receive from the police. However, the applicant has agreed to their conditions and a copy of the police representation is attached to Appendix B. No other representation was received from the responsible authorities. We received 5 representations from local residents, which included 1 from a local councillor, and copies of these are attached to Appendix C. In determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, the subcommittee must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, that is to say, the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. The representations, including supporting information presented by all the parties. The guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, National Guidance, and the Council's own Statement of Licensing Policy. The subcommittee must take such of the following steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. That's grant the application as asked, modify the conditions of the licence by altering or omitting or adding to them, reject the whole or part of the application, refuse to accept the proposed DPS. The subcommittee is asked to note that it may not modify the conditions or reject the whole or part of the application merely because it considers it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. The representations received appears to relate to issues that fall under the licensing objectives. It is recommended that members determine the application to grant the premises licence in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and subsequent regulations, guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy. Thank you.
Thank you, and again welcome to everybody. I omitted to introduce everybody at the beginning. So my name's Ian Stutely, I'm the chair today. We've got Councillor Jacob Huntley to my left, Councillor Caroline Ackroyd to my right. I'll just introduce David and Selina from NP Law, who are providing legal advice to the panel today. We have 3 objectors, and the applicant, Mr. Louis Blake. Welcome to you all. We also have George from the local press, and welcome to you too. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll hear from Mr. Blake first, and perhaps if you just give us some background to the proposal that you've got, the application, how the business is running at the moment, and how you intend to operate the business, please. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So perhaps it's pertinent that I give some background as to the context of the business. So I started the business in 2018 as an opium house, and very much a mission-driven business. I sought to popularise the eating of plant-based food, very passionate about healthy eating and sustainability. And the restaurant, I must admit at the start, I didn't particularly know what I was doing, but it started to do quite well, and we're able to grow the business into other locations. We opened in Brighton, Edinburgh, London. But during the pandemic, obviously a very challenging time for restaurants, and my priority was to help to keep my staff employed. At the end of the pandemic, sadly we had to scale back to the Norwich site, and as much as myself and my family that were involved trying to support the restaurant, we actually ended up liquidating the business. But then the business was bought by some partners that we knew, and they've retained myself to help grow the business again, to help keep the staff employed. We work with a number of local suppliers who are all taken care of throughout that liquidation, and the mission remains very much the same. I think it's relevant to state that in that time, and something that we continue to do, is support local initiatives. So we cook for the Benjamin Foundation Cookout every year for free. We've ran mental health workshops for free. We've ran community yoga for free, running clubs for free. And we very much operate as a healthy eating restaurant. Now, given where the world is, we're facing an energy crisis, we're facing a labour crisis. I've had to already, in the last 8 weeks, having not served alcohol, significantly reduced staff hours, which is painful to do, particularly after I've had to manage those staff throughout COVID. And actually, for context, for a restaurant business such as ours, around 40% of our revenue comes from the sale of alcohol. Most of this is sold at meal times. We do have a small function space upstairs, which, if it wasn't for that space, we would probably struggle to survive. And certainly without the sale of alcohol, with that 40% of revenue, we would be in a position where the restaurant would not be able to function. And that's been evident throughout the last 8 weeks, having not sold any alcohol. So for me, actually, the context of what happened, given the reason we're here today discussing the licence, is that during that liquidation process and the confusion around how to take care of everything that was going on was such that the application was supposed to be moved over to the new company and wasn't done so in the time frame that was given. After I learned about that, naturally we stopped selling alcohol, and I was advised that we had to reapply for the licence. In reapplying for the licence, I'd applied for exactly the same conditions, the same hours. The only change was that I would be the DPS, as I'm now more involved in the business. But other than that, there was no change. I would also state that in the 4.5 years that we've been at the premises, there hasn't been a single incident. There's never been a police call to the building. I haven't received any contact or any concerns raised by any local resident whatsoever. In fact, the only communication I've had with local residents is when they've come in to eat, and we've generally got on very well, and they've thanked us for being there and providing that option for them. We have good relationships with all of the local businesses, and indeed the local school, the local offices nearby. And I think it's important that a city such as Norwich and an area such as Tombland, there's an opportunity for people to eat healthier and sustainably sourced food. We source something locally, and it's incredibly healthy food. And it goes beyond being a restaurant. 10,000 trees planted in the last 4 years. We're not simply there to make money. We're very much there for the purpose that we set out to do, and I intend to continue that purpose. That being said, as I said before, without the sale of alcohol to support that business, it simply cannot survive. And so I'm not suggesting that I want to become a nightclub. I'm not actually suggesting that anything changed in terms of the operation of the business. We will continue, or my intention is to continue to serve alcohol at lunchtime and meal times, and to be able to offer an event space for events, and such as the need to have the operating hours that are stated in the plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think David has a number of questions about the application specifically.
Not that his mic's working, but hopefully everyone's good morning. Just for formalities, are we recording? Regarding the application form, there are a few matters that need clarification so that the councillors know the scope of your application at this stage. Do you have a copy of the agenda? Lovely. So if we go first page to page 16. You'll see at the top right boxes to say whether the live music you're intending will take place indoors, outdoors or both, and none of those have been completed. The committee therefore is unclear at this time where, we'll get onto the plan in a moment, but where you're intending just indoors live music.
Yes.
And you want to make that clarification to your application?
Yes.
If I could ask you to look then at page 17, this deals with recorded music. You've marked indoors only, but you've also marked further details, background music in a restaurant. I don't know whether you've taken legal or professional advice. You don't need a premises licence for recorded music, it's only background music. So there's a contradiction here. If you could explain that, would be appreciated.
Yes. So the only time music is played is indeed as background music in a restaurant. So if that's the case, and as you stated, there's a contradiction, therefore I imagine I don't need a proof on that, right?
I can't advise you, I just advise the committee. I'm just flagging at the moment we've got an application that appears unnecessary in this respect.
Okay.
I didn't know what you wanted to do.
I can confirm that the only time music is played is as background music in a restaurant setting, yes.
Right, so I'm not being clear enough, so I don't want to lead you. Are you withdrawing this part of your application?
Yes.
Thank you. If I could ask you next to look at page 20. This indicates provision of late night depression, indoors and outdoors. There's a plan attached to the application, and we've all had copies of it, but these indicate marked areas for lifestyle activities, and all of them are indoors only. So therefore there's another contradiction here. Can you assist?
Yes, I can withdraw the application for outdoors.
Regarding page 21, supply of alcohol, you've marked on the premises only.
Yes.
You're not seeking an off-licence.
No.
Can you assist with the agreed condition from the police as the person's being discouraged from taking alcohol off the premises without an off-licence? It would be unlawful. The condition is not necessary, and there's a point of confusion there.
Okay.
Is there something the police know that isn't clear to this committee?
I don't believe so.
Very good. Thank you. So, alcohol, you're clear, is on the premises only?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Does that complete your list, David?
Sorry, no, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
But the other points are, I think, minor by comparison. Your opening hours indicate no drinking up time. In other words, a gap between last possible service of alcohol and the need to remove persons from the premises. I think on page 23, there's a missing word in that A general. Second line, all times when the premises are for any licensed activity, should we read open in that?
Yes.
Regarding page 24, is there a reason why CCTV will be provided to the police alone and not, for example, to the licensing authority?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So, is there a reason why on page 24, CCTV images will be provided to the police, but there's no mention of them being provided to the licensing authority?
No, there's no reason why it should be provided to the licensing authority, no.
Would you wish to amend that proposed operating schedule to include the licensing
Sure.
authority? Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so just for the benefit of members of the public and anyone watching, we as a committee have to consider the licence based on the application presented to us, and everything within the licence has to be clear and enforceable. Therefore, David is asking questions just to clarify some of the areas that were unclear previously, and there'll be a few more bits of detail as we go through. I'll ask members of the committee now if they have any questions. I think Councillor Huntley first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Blake. I just wanted to go back to page 16 of the application here. So we've received the clarification that live music will take place indoors. You mentioned in your initial remarks that there is a small function space. Is that where the live music would be taking place?
Yes.
Or is live music going to be in any other parts of the premises?
No, it's just in that space.
It's just in that space. Could we just perhaps clarify where that is on plan, please?
It's a lounge bar area.
So that's lounge bar area, zone 3.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Just leave a formal amendment, as the current application doesn't differentiate between licensable areas.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Page, would you like to formally amend your application to state that live music will only take place in the lounge bar in zone 3?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor April, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Could I just ask for a further bit of clarification, please, about the live music? Would you see that happening from time to time, or simply when you're having a function? Is that an every night thing?
It's probably happened 4 times in 4 years.
Okay, right. So following on from thinking about music and thinking about numbers of people, how would you, or how will you, or how do you seek to mitigate noise level when people are going outside or leaving your premises? You know, thinking about the people who live around. What's your policy? What's your way of dealing with noise?
Sure, yeah, well, we have a policy in place at the moment, and it's indeed displayed in the restaurant as well. So the staff have a policy they follow in terms of closing down procedure. Guests are asked to leave quietly. There's signage relating to leaving quietly and how they should leave. The guests, we have a smaller capacity, which means that smaller groups leaving. There's signage on the way out, there's signage at the door. So as I said, in the 4 years that we've been having these functions and these events, there hasn't been a single complaint. So it would be my understanding that it's working quite efficiently at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been pointed out to me that I addressed you as Mr. Page. Apologies, Mr. Blake. Can you just expand on that and tell us about the number of events that you've had with live music and the timings that those have taken so far, please?
Sure. So, as I said, we've probably had 4 events since we opened. None this year. We've done 2 fundraisers, which were kind of open mic style events, so people can come and perform. We don't have nightclub or music venue amplifications. These are restaurant speakers, so they're not particularly loud, I wouldn't say. But yeah, typically when we do them, they're organised events outside of restaurant trade, and so there'll be a small group of 20, 25 people. They're arranged every now and again when there's a cause to be raised or there's a girl that works for us that tends to organise them and plays herself. So they're fairly casual, intermittent, and kind of as and when there's such room. But for us to run an event such as that, it takes away from restaurant trades. There has to be a pretty good reason for us to do it.
Okay, thank you. And what time scales or what time periods do they run for? So, for example, when will they start and
Normally
finish?
between 6 and 9 for live music.
Okay. So your application for live music is until 2 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning, 7 days a week. Have you ever used that licence to its full? Okay. So is there a reason why you've applied for 2 o'clock in the morning?
As I said, I've just continued the previous hours that I had before. I thought it would be the simplest way to continue.
Okay. So therefore, have you considered amending those hours? Because I think some of the issues that members of the public have presented to us are about the timings, and they're concerned about late night noise disturbance, and it may be reassuring to them if you were to amend those hours, although this is your application and
Yes.
we're not suggesting that you have to do that.
Sorry, I'd be more than happy to amend the live music hours until, say, 10 p.m. every day. It wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't make a difference to our business.
Okay, so are you formally amending live music finishing times to 10 p.m.
Yes.
on each of the 7 days?
Each of the 7 days. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Huntley, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. You mentioned that for the small number of live music events that you run, was it 20 to 25 people, I think you were saying, would be in attendance. How does that differ from the normal capacity of the restaurant?
So we have 44 seats in the restaurant, so slightly lower, albeit when there's obviously seated guests in the restaurants, they typically arrive and leave at different times. When there's an event, they will obviously leave intermittently, but it's more of everyone leaving at the same time, and that's only around the live music events. But yeah, typically the restaurant, 44 seats in the main restaurant. We never have everyone at the same time, naturally, because it would be difficult to serve that many people at once. So typically people leaving in the evening, last table is in at 9:30, the latest they'll be out is 11:30, 12. If we're doing an event or there's a private hire of the space, we have had people leave 1:30, 2 o'clock as per reason for the licence to be that late. But even then again, it's intermittent exits at that point.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll hear now from any of the objectors that wish to speak. Just going down my list, I've got Miss Page first. Would you like to go first? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd first just like to ask Mr. Blake for clarity on the last little transaction of details that went on, which I didn't quite understand. So can I first of all make clear in my mind what this last short conversation was?
Yes, of course. Please do. Yeah, ask any questions you wish.
Okay. It seemed to be, Mr. Blake, that you wished to continue the previous licence, as that was the simpler thing to do. And just before that, you said that you would amend the hours to finish at 10 p.m. on 7 days a week, rather than the 2 p.m. as stated in the licence?
That was a reference to the live music
Live
performances specifically.
Okay, thank you. And so any recorded music would not be covered by the 10 p.m.
Recorded music has been withdrawn from the application.
It's going to be background music.
Oh, so it's just going to be background music?
Apart from occasional events.
Yes, as I understand the application as amended, and Mr. Blake will be able to chip in and say this is incorrect. At the moment we have an application for live music until from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. Recorded music has been withdrawn, and background music is not something that you need a licence for, so we're talking about low-level background
Right.
music.
Thank you. Okay. Well, it seems that our objection from myself and Professor Paul Blinsky, we live at number 24 Princess Street, was entirely to do with egress of sound from the premises, and our objection was made because on previous, under a previous management at Birmingham House, we have suffered repeated occasions of unwelcome, loud recorded music coming out of the premises from after 11 p.m. and sometimes till the early hours of the morning. And our fear was that the same thing could happen again if a licence is granted until 2 a.m. And there are no mitigating conditions. While it seems that Mr. Blake will be an extraordinarily responsible person to run these premises, I think the licence provisions nevertheless might allow for some protection of ourselves and perhaps other residents who feel that way, that a condition, indeed conditions applied to the previous licence, which has been circulated to us before the meeting, whether those conditions might still attach to the grant of this current licence. Because over time, of course, premises can change hands, or indeed the way of operating can change itself, as you've remarked, Mr. Blake, in relation to to circumstances, beyond anyone's control and so on. And so, am I right to think that those conditions might still apply? Or is it so that the premises will not be licensed for amplified music?
Yes, the live recorded music has been withdrawn. Background music obviously can have different levels. But I will just ask Mr. Blake about the previous licence did have a limiter, sound limiter as part of the conditions. Do you have a sound limiter in place? Can you describe your amplified music setup, please?
Yes, as I stated, it's a restaurant sound system, which is quite different from a bar or a nightclub. And yes, I'd be happy to adhere to the prior licence conditions that have that included.
May I just wait one more thing about the conditions, which
Sure, I
were
didn't
that...
understand if that was a formal...
Yes, I'll just I'll ask Ms. Page to just finish, and then we'll...
the other condition was about all windows to the licensed area shall remain closed when musical entertainments take place, and we would ask that that condition be reapplied, please.
Okay, thank you. So it is up to the applicant if he wishes to formally put any additional conditions forward as an offer. And I think David has a question also about that before we get to Mr. Blake.
Chair, I was just going to give Mr. Blake formal warning. He's unrepresented. I don't know whether you have experience in licensing matters. You need to be very careful before agreeing to something of such cost. It is something you can and will comply with, as failure to do so will be a criminal offence. You have, I think, a copy of the old premises licence, and I would strongly recommend you take a few moments to go through those conditions because we said earlier to committee that you was the effective intended to run the same, but that is not at all clear on your application. There's very few build ones on you, and you need to be confident that you can, and you understand and can comply with anything on your operating schedule. It is so important that it really needs care, and not a sort of comfortable answer in the middle of committee. So, Chair, I would suggest the applicant takes a few moments to carefully read.
I guess I was going to suggest that we have a short break. I've got Ms Page has another question. We'll hear that first.
Just to say that the points in question about the permitted maximum sound level and the windows are numbers 24 and 25.
Yeah.
Yes, so they're on a previous licence.
Yeah,
so
that's understood, noted by the committee. That is your request, and Mr Blake has indicated he'd be happy with those. However, David has also pointed out that Mr Blake said that he would like the licence to be the same as before. So therefore, I would advise we take 15 minutes or so break just for Mr Blake to read through those conditions, not just 24 and 25, but other conditions there, and consider whether any of those would also be relevant to the application to add to this application. So we'll take from now a 15-minute break approximately, and return at 11:20, please. just make sure we're recording, and we are. Okay, so welcome back to the Licensing Subcommittee, Thursday 15th of September. We've just taken a break for the applicant to read through some paperwork. We've heard from Ms Page, who's suggested some new conditions for the application. I'd also like to hear from Ms Rudlin. If you'd like to speak, please go ahead, and then we'll hear again from the applicant.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Pernilla Rudlin. I live at 26 Princes Street. And I just wanted to say, I wanted to say it anyway, even before what Mr Blake said, but I really like living in Toonland. I know some people have criticised us for like, well, why do you live in the city centre if you know, but actually I really like it. I like the buzz. And I want the best for businesses in Toonland, including the bars and restaurants. And actually it was a huge relief when Oakham House opened up in 2018, and I think really brought something nice to the city. And I'm very sad that it went bust again in June 2022. And so my worry was, as I stated in my objections, not so much Oakham House as it is now, but what it was like before. And in fact, we had a meeting here, I think, about 5 years ago, because the previous occupants, House of Tiago, very similarly wanted to renew the licence on the same conditions as previously, and said that they might have customers who wanted to dance or party until 2 or 3 in the morning. We never actually got the chance to see whether that was true or not, because they went bust shortly after, and owed to council, by the way, £170,000 in unpaid business rates. So I just thought I had a terrible flashback to that whole time, and when I used to go out into Toonland. The previous people before House of Tiago, Farmer Brown's, used to have regular nightclubs in that space that you want to have live music in. And just standing out there in my nightie at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to work out where this sort of booming sound was coming from. I really don't want to go back there again. So I'm very pleased to hear that that's not the case. And I very much wish the best for Oakham House in its new incarnation, and I hope it doesn't try to turn itself into a nightclub. Perhaps just a standard licence till 11 p.m. with just being able to apply for the occasional temporary event notice might be the way forward on this, I just thought, but I'm not an expert in this, so I leave it up to you guys to decide. Yes, I guess the remaining concern perhaps is the alcohol licence through to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every day. Doesn't sound like that's actually going to happen very much. Currently the restaurant doesn't open beyond 9 o'clock. But I guess the concern is, I really hope this doesn't happen, but if the place gets sold again, the business gets sold again, and the new owners think that this is a good place to have a nightclub. And of course, 50% of British nightclubs closed down in the past 2007, 2017, and 20% furthermore closed down in the past 3 years. So I think that it does seem that nightclub life that I caught the tail end of when I first moved to Norwich is kind of over. And I really hope it is, because my son is of an age to go nightclubbing, and actually his idea of a good time out is to go board gaming and then go to a pub. And he's usually home by midnight. And so I don't think those 1980s, 1990s vibes are back and will ever come back. The one time they did try to go clubbing on Prince of Wales Road, he got stabbed in the hand. Well, he didn't, his friend got stabbed in the hand. And I really don't want to see that culture reappear in Toonland. And I'm sure the council doesn't want to either, because you spent all that money redeveloping it. So let's stick with the continental piazza restaurant vibe. And I think Oakham House very much contributed to that, and I hope it continues to. I just have to say, I just don't want to go back to the time when I regularly used to pick up needles. We still get a little bit of excrement and things like that in Toonland Alley, but hopefully we'll find a solution to stopping that, the drug dealing and the shopping lines on our church wall and things like that still go on, unfortunately. And I'm afraid it's very much associated with the nightclub culture. But hopefully not Oakham House ever again.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really good to hear lived experiences of the people in the area. And so before we talk about conditions, Mr Blake, would you like to respond to both of the objectors and it sounds like both are more comfortable with the hours that you've described or offered for live music in particular, and your description of how your background music will operate. Could you also respond to the other points that the objectors have made, please?
Sure. So I live in the city centre myself, so I can empathise with your concerns around music and people leaving late. Specifically, I can't speak to the future and tell you now that I'm going to be there in 3 or 5 years, 10 years' time. I very much hope I will. I've invested the best part of, I don't even want to say how much. I've never paid myself in the business. I've had to significantly invest money every month for the last 36 months to keep people in a job. I've put a lot of time and energy. I employ my mum to work there. It's my mum and dad's life. They love the business. And so I've partnered with the right people now to protect the long-term future of the business. So I know that at least for the next 12, 24 months, I'm in a position to continue to run the business. So there's no short-term risk for the business following the same suit we did last time. Pandemic pending, hopefully there's not another one of those. In terms of late night, as I said before, the event space and the hiring out of event space is important to the business. That being said, I hope that we've proved in the 4 or so years that we've been there and we have been operating those later evenings that there hasn't been any problem directly associated to Oakham House or indeed people leaving the premises. Do you want me to address the conditions now that were proposed in terms of the previous licence? Or?
Yes, well, you've had an opportunity to read through the previous conditions on the old licence. I know that David has some concerns about some of those anyway. So would you like to just talk to us about how you feel about those, and then perhaps with David you could run through those one by one. Unfortunately, it does take quite a long time to do that, but again, as I said before, we have to take the application in its entirety and make sure that every detail is correct, and then it's that licence that we consider at the end of the process.
Well, I believe it was proposed that items 24 and 25 were, that was the proposal, I believe. So item 24 being the maximum sound level. Obviously, I'm familiar with the conditions because I've been operating the business for over 4 years, so we've obviously reviewed these items before. We have in the past, when we first opened, I believe the second week we opened, had a sound check. So at that point, obviously, we were quite close to this, and we have the necessary equipment on site to measure sound, although we haven't needed it since then. And in terms of the windows being closed, actually we can't open the windows because it's a what's the word I'm looking for? When the building's at a certain age and you can't make changes to it. The word escapes me, however, listed. It's a Grade 2 listed building, and actually the windows are so old they don't even open. So even if I wanted to open them, I wouldn't be able to. So I'm more than happy to agree to both points proposed.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that you have sound equipment on site. Do you currently have a limiter on your sound?
We don't have a limiter as such. We do have a tool to measure how loud music is.
Okay, thank you. And regarding other conditions, general conditions, and also those relating to the licensing objectives, prevention of crime, disorder, public safety, and protection of children from harm, are you happy with the conditions that you put forward in your main application, or are there any that you would like to add to reinforce your application?
As I said previously, I'm happy to continue the prior conditions that were in the previous licence on this application. So if there was a necessity for me to put those forward again, and yet, as I understand there is, then yes, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. Well, it's your application. Yeah. So
yes.
If you wish to put them forward, there are a few issues with the wording in those original conditions. and David, who we've moved where he has a mic available to him, would like to go through them, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to emphasise, as just mentioned to you, these should be matters offered by yourself, not imposed and no obligation. And that bit's important. If they're offered by you, you cannot appeal them, depending obviously on the result of today's application. But were you to be successful, the offered conditions would be part of your licence. You cannot appeal those. If they are imposed by the councillors, then you do have an opportunity to appeal. Again, supposing your application is successful. So that's the basic law of making sure that you are happy to offer.
Yes.
Then there are a couple of matters that I need to flag with you, as again, there is confusion and error. So, one, I'm afraid these lines are numbered rather than the conditions are numbered, but I'll go through them each one. Number 2, no particular issue, very straightforward. Number 3, there will be a 1-hour chill-out period after all licence activities cease, to allow for people waiting for transport home to remain in the premises. You are not able to offer that with your current application, as currently you are not having any difference in timing between last licensable activity and persons being on the premises. So unless you amend your application, you cannot offer condition number 3.
Perhaps it might be helpful to say that if you wished to amend your application, if you were to amend the sale of alcohol and other elements to allow that, that would be permissible. However, I don't think you can extend your opening hours to accommodate this.
Well, I mean, I'd be quite happy to, again, and I speak not from feeling forced to do so, but from experience of operating the venue. The events that we have, we do not have people in until drinking past 2 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday anyway. So for me to, again, to amend those hours to be an hour earlier, to allow for that hour, I think it's also responsible to have an hour to allow for people to clear out. So I would like that included. And as a result, I'd be happy to amend the hours to reflect that. So if that's an hour taken off, and an hour for people to leave, I'd be happy to amend the application to reflect that.
Okay, thank you. So you wish to amend the hours for the sale of alcohol for an hour earlier on each day?
Yes, quite right, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Hunter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify with David that what could happen here is accepting some of these conditions.
We'd have to reword, Councillor, because the offer condition number 3, after all licensed activities cease, and clearly that still conflicts if anything's up to the closing hours. Once again, these are matters not imposed, not obliged to you. Options are either to amend all your licensable activities or to say, after consideration, you do not offer number 3 of the old licence, and it is completely your choice.
So I understand it. What I'm proposing is, and however we word this, is that there's a chill-out period after the sale of alcohol for an hour.
Right. So if you could concentrate, please, on the wording of number 3 on the old licence.
Yes.
You'll see that this says there will be a 1-hour chill-out period after all licensed activities cease.
Yes.
If only alcohol is amended, you still are failing to comply with that wording.
Therefore, perhaps a suitable wording, again this is your choice, might be a 1-hour period after supply of alcohol. ceases. Again, slightly different wording to that, perhaps.
Yes.
You'll have to think carefully about the wording. But if you're proposing, regarding page 21 in the pack, if you're proposing to bring forward the finishing times for the supply of alcohol to 1 o'clock Monday to Friday, 2 o'clock Saturday, and again 1 o'clock on Sunday, that would allow an hour's drinking up period. So you might concentrate your wording on providing a 1 hour drinking up period.
Yes.
So would you like to offer some wording to replace item number 3 in the old schedule?
Sure, yeah, so something like that. So there will be a 1 hour drinking up period after the state of alcohol.
David, does that cover it? The old wording has to allow people waiting for transport home to remain in the premises.
What you could do, what could be done, Chair, is if we take as read that on page 21 of the agenda there has been an application made to bring those finish times earlier by an hour in all days. Is that right?
Yes.
So Monday 1 a.m, Tuesday 1 a.m, Wednesday 1 a.m, Thursday 1 a.m, Friday 1 a.m, and obviously these are the following days, Saturday 2 a.m, Sunday 1 a.m. Then in respect of proposed condition 3 on the old licence, you could say there will be a 1 hour chill out period after the last activity of the sale of alcohol has ceased to allow for people waiting for transport home to remain in the premises. I mean, the last half of the sentence is of no interest, but it doesn't harm anybody. Are you happy with that wording?
Yes.
Max, do we have a Norwich licensing forum? In which case 5 can stay, Chair. I can't guarantee it's not relevant.
The applicant might wish to insert a more similar body. I think it might well be a pub watch.
Pub watch is still in place, then? Yeah.
Or similar body. I won't read everything out. You've had the time to read through them. The next one of concern was 11. Any persons who appear to be under the age of 18 years. The reason I raised this as concern, of course, your papers say charge 25, basically.
Yes.
Which one are you going for?
25.
So I'm amending 11 to 25. There's an awful lot, Chair, that is indistinct and unclear, but I can't say that's particularly dreadful if it's offered. The spirit of the thing is clear enough.
Yeah.
19, I suggest we take that out as sufficient sanitary accommodation is provided, nothing is gained by having that in. Important item 20. Safety and security lighting, in other words, any lighting, must be positioned as to not cause nuisance to neighbours or adjoining properties. That could have implications depending on neighbours or adjoining properties. Are you happy with it?
If you consider your existing lighting
Yes.
and the impact that it may have now or in the future on the neighbouring properties and the uses for those neighbouring properties, it's an important one to ensure that that you're happy with that one.
So I don't get to have an issue with it.
The implication being that if any of your existing lighting does cause a nuisance to neighbouring properties, an enforcement may come forward where you are required to change that lighting.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. David.
Thank you, Chair.
I think the last thing would be probably 25, all windows are licensed area, shall remain closed. You've got several licensed areas. You've mentioned you're happy the windows to the area of live music don't open anyway. How about the other licensed areas? Can you comply with that obligation?
Yes, none of the windows open.
Chair, there's no obvious inconsistency or illogicality about the remainder, even if they might be better worded for enforceability in some cases, but there's no legal reason to require further. If the applicant is happy with those as amended to be part of their operating schedule.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Just highlight number 27, no persons under the age of 18 years must be allowed to access that part of the premises during any time when, where and when activity and entertainment of a sexual nature is being provided. I'm not sure that that is going to be relevant.
No, Chair, but as it was useful boilerplate, I didn't see a reason to take it away.
Okay.
You're right, it's not relevant to the particular matter in front of you. This isn't an SEV or anything like that.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Do you allow minors onto the site, so under 18s? Are they allowed onto your premises?
Yes.
And there's no condition stating that they should leave at a given time, so that they are allowed to remain until you close?
Well,
the conditions as supplied in your original application and the amended offered conditions don't have any reference to refusal of 18 after a particular time. Are you happy with that?
yes.
Okay, thank you. David, any other matters relating to conditions?
I don't think so. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So we have other objectors who've made representations in the original pack. And we've heard from two, and another objector was here, and unfortunately had to leave. There are two further submissions. Which I'd like you just to respond to, please, and that is page 40. A suggested condition there is music should stop at 11 o'clock, and actually that one has been covered now in terms of live music. And also page 42. The pack. That particular objector has made reference to people leaving premises in the area, and the committee should note that it's not the responsibility of licensees. Individuals are not the responsibility of licensees. They have their own responsibility when leaving premises. However, licensed premises can put in mitigation. You've described CCTV, and you also described signs and people being asked to leave quietly. Would you like to make any other response to claims or concerns that there might be noise generated after people leave your premises, please?
No, I just simply reiterate that obviously in the 4.5 years we've traded, there hasn't been a direct complaint to us, so I'm quite confident that there is no issue.
Okay, thank you. And finally, the submission from Councillor Ash Haynes. She's made 3 main points. I think a couple of them are covered. But item number 3, the concern about late night moving of rubbish and bottles, glass bottles. Would you like to respond to that? You may wish to do so by limiting the time when you can operate or take part in that kind of activity.
Yes, at present the collections are in the mornings, and it's the kitchen's responsibility to clear down. So that typically happens in the mornings, not in the evenings. Staff are pretty desperate to get out at the end of the night, so they tend to do the refuse at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I can't imagine it would be from us.
Okay, so in that case, again, this is entirely up to you. You may wish to ensure that objectors are satisfied with that by offering a condition whereby you state the hours between which that activity of removing rubbish and bottles.
Sure, makes sense. Okay, yeah, happy to propose that bottles are removed between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. perhaps. Maybe we say 10 p.m. to be safe in case it's a post-restaurant shift. So 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. is the hours in which glass bottles can be removed from the venue, or indeed refuse can be put outside.
Okay, thank you. David, is that...
Chair, we need an amendment to the old condition 21, currently saying the premises misspelled and must remove their waste and refuse in a timely manner, which is obviously unenforceable, can't say what time we need. To a licensed waste disposal facility, so wording instead that premises must ensure removal of waste, including bottles, only takes place between 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. How will you control your waste operator to ensure they can comply?
It's a policy we've already put in place, owing to the fact that sometimes when we come in the morning, when we used to put things out late at night, we'd find rubbish strewn all over Toonland, which, being in Toonland, we don't want. We're technically residents there as well. So it's a policy we already have in place. We don't put rubbish out at night, we put it out in the mornings. So it's already a policy the staff are trained on. It's part of their opening procedure.
Okay, so you'll have a contractor who collects that.
We do indeed, yes.
Are they able to meet the conditions that you've offered in terms of timing? Okay, thank you.
Chair, if it turns out they're not, then the premises will simply have to put their waste back and keep it indoors between unacceptable hours for collection.
Might I suggest that we move it earlier? Let's say 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. in case of, as was pointed out previously, conditions change or we work with a new company perhaps in the future. I won't want to be held to this should we end up working with somebody else.
Which is why we need to be careful on the wording. These are offered by you, not imposed.
Yes.
So if you want to say it's offered at 6 a.m, then that is how it is.
Correct. Okay, yeah, it's offered at 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
And I believe that Ms Page would like to respond to that.
I just thought the sound of bottles falling at 6 a.m. into containers is not a welcome one for residents. Could it possibly be 7, 8? Yeah.
I'm happy to offer 7 a.m. yes.
Thank you.
Amending to 7 a.m, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we've got a full set of new conditions offered. I will ask members of the public and objectors if they would like to say anything else, ask any questions of the applicant or the committee. Yeah, Ms Page.
I'd just like to say that I think I'm very encouraged by Mr Blake's replies to our concerns. Having lived where we live, just off Toonland for 18 years, there's a certain pattern of recurrence over time, and it's not Mr. Blake's tenure of the premises that would be of concern to us, but how this licence might affect potential future businesses who might occupy those same premises. And just as a point of clarity for myself, I mean, this is called a premises licence, and yet it seems to attach to any individual business that occupies those premises. So could I just ask for some explanation about what a premises licence actually is, and its remit in terms of future businesses that might come into those same premises?
Yes, okay. In terms of this licence, it will be applied to the premises. Premises licences are able to be transferred and taken up by new owners, so there is potential for a new owner to take over and apply to have the same premises licence or transfer to them. Therefore, clearly you're interested in how that might pan out. However, all premises licence are open to a review procedure, so if in the future a new business comes in, takes the licence over and operates in a way that's not that doesn't meet the licensing objectives, then members of the public have an opportunity to make a representation to the council for a potential review of that licence, and that applies to any premises anywhere within the licensing authority. So members of the public always do have an opportunity to make a representation. Starting with the complaints procedure, if it's noise, recording noise, and recording incidents that breach the licensing objectives.
We're very familiar with those conditions. It does mean a whole run of sleepless nights, unfortunately, but I suppose that's just the way it is. Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Blake will be virtue personified in respect of all that, so we wish him very well.
It is an area where there's quite a density of premises, and I say this in many meetings that we have. Members of the public, if they have problems with this premises or any other premises, then they should make representations to the council, to the police if it's relevant, and all evidence that's collected can be used later if a review comes to the committee. So there is a safeguard in place. However, there's a number of hoops that you have to jump through in order to make that come to fruition. However, we're here to consider this particular application as presented and as offered with new conditions, amended conditions. Do you have any last questions for the applicant? In that case, I'll ask David if he's got any questions, and then we'll hear from other committee members and then from the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. It's just clarification on the offered conditions as originally done. And I'm thinking especially page 24, rather than just if the application is successful, cut and paste. There are some things here that are unclear. So number 3 says cameras viewing till areas must capture frames not less than 50% of screen. And frankly, I don't know what that means. So if the applicant can help on what the offered condition means, that would be great.
It relates to if there's an incident around the till, such as a theft. And the only reason I know this is I actually had a theft in another venue recently, so I'm quite familiar with this point in question. It has to show the area in question to take up at least 50% of the screen, meaning that if the camera is pointed to cover part of the restaurant and part of the till, the area which shows the till cannot be less than 50%. Otherwise, it's not the evidence is not able to be used, as I understand it. So that was the reason for it being in there. Touch wood, obviously, we don't have any theft, but that's why it's in there. Happy to offer a rewording, or indeed to remove it. It's not relevant.
That's helpful, thank you. So I've sort of done a theoretical rewording. Cameras viewing till areas must capture views showing not less than 50% of the till on screen.
Yes.
I've no idea what 4 below is supposed to do. I mean, I can guess, but wide angle to give an overview of the premises. I don't see how I can enforce any breach or say you're successful there. Any camera is going to give an overview of the premises.
Yes, it would seem it's a pointless point, yes.
Rather than just reproduce something with no value, I'll take it out if that's...
Yes.
Again, be capable of visually confirming the nature of the crime committed.
I would agree it's unenforceable, yes.
Linked record, yes. Good quality images, colour during opening times. Again, I've seen it before, but it's close to unenforceable. Sufficient for evidential purposes in court? I mean, I've no idea what good quality images are.
Difficult to apply metric to
Yes.
ascertain that anyway, right? So yeah, have to remove it.
Well, we can either remove it or make it enforceable. If they are sufficient to be used as evidence, it's slightly better.
Okay.
Um, 8 is ridiculous, operate under existing light levels. Don't see the value of that at all. Of course they'll be operating under existing light levels.
Is it removed?
Yeah. If it was designed to do something that's not clear, now's the time to say.
No.
Do you have a recording device in a secure area or locked cabinet?
Yes.
Do you have a monitor?
Yes.
31 days, that conflicts with the 28 days on the old ones, but you'll be obliged to follow the most onerous condition, so effectively you end up at 31. I've already said the council will also have the advantages of the police. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask how many cameras you have as part of your CCTV setup?
Yes, there's 7.
Okay, and are the cameras in each of the rooms?
Yes.
Each of the licensable
Yes.
rooms? Do you have an outside camera?
Yes.
And what does that cover?
Covers the entrance.
Okay.
There's only one entrance and exit.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Ackroyd had a question, please.
I did. Thank you, Chair. But can I just ask, do you have a camera for your outside area?
Yes.
You do, yes. Thank you. So my understanding is that you serve food outside,
And so, yeah, we do. The
Yes.
1 month of summer that we get, yes.
but your alcohol licence is for consumption on the premises.
Yes.
So you are aware,
I am.
you are,
Yes.
okay,
Yes. We don't serve food outside at night, so that's
but
best.
you wouldn't be able to serve alcohol.
I'm quite aware.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other points from councillors at this stage? Or David? Okay, thank you. Mr. Blake, if you'd like to just address the committee one more time, we'll just with some closing remarks and anything else you'd like to add. We will then, after that, we will pause to make a determination. So is there anything else you'd like to say to us?
There's nothing further I'd like to add. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and thank you. Okay, so in that case, we'll pause now. We'll ask members of the public to leave the room again, and we'll come back in, I would say, around about 20 minutes, 12:30, no earlier than 12:30, and we'll ask you to come back in and we'll give our determination then. Okay, thank you for coming back to Norwich City Council Licensing Subcommittee. Thursday 15th of September, we're considering the application of a grant of a premises licence for Erpingham House, 22 Tombland, Norwich. Okay, and first of all I can say that unanimously we have decided to grant the application as amended with the conditions offered. We thank you for responding positively to the questions and the requests from members of the public. Thank you also to members of the public for your contribution. David will highlight the reasons that we've come to the decision. And then describe the appeal process, please.
Thank you, Chair, will do. So, committee has granted unanimously the application as amended with the conditions as amended and added today. The committee does not impose any condition. They've reviewed the application as amended, as I say, noted the vigorous conditions as now offered, and feel that the licensing objectives are sufficiently supported and promoted. Licensed activities are indoors only. Noise controls have been introduced regarding noise limits that should be sufficient to ensure no nuisance arises from live music. A drinking up period after alcohol sales finish has now been introduced, which should reduce and assist disturbance from customers on leaving the premises. The committee, as mentioned, is happy to grant. There is a right of appeal for those who have made relevant representations who view that the premises licence should not have been granted, or, if granted, that alternative conditions should have been imposed. And that right of appeal should be exercised within 21 days of receipt of written notification to a magistrate's court.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to members of the public that while we've granted the application today, if in the future there are any issues with this premises or any premises in your area, please do make representations to the relevant authorities. All such submissions will be recorded and noted. Again, one of the reasons why we made the decision is that we feel that this applicant will be able to manage the premises appropriately to meet those licensing objectives. So we wish you well, and thank you again to all for coming, and that concludes the meeting. Yes, if you'd like to say something, please do.
Sorry, may I ask, date effective? Is it effective immediately, or is there a period of time to allow it to come into place?
I understand it is immediate. David, can you confirm?
I believe so, though it may take some time for the actual paperwork to follow, but the decision of committee will be notified in writing to you and to those who made relevant representations in rather more depth than I've got into today.
Thank you.
Okay.